Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 2, Intro to Soc. This is the week we explore culture and socialization, or the process of learning culture. Start to examine kind of macro level stuff, which is culture itself. What is culture? Values, beliefs, ideas that take place within a community of people. And then we move into more the micro, we call the micro level, which is the self-identity, self-concept, and a lot of concepts related to that regarding socialization. So let's kind of walk through different parts of the review and exploration assignment, give you a little bit more background and information on some of the terms and some of the ideas. The first question on content review is about subculture and counterculture. I think it's kind of really important to make the distinction that subcultures, they serve a purpose. There's a function to subcultures. People are seeking meaning and identity and belonging and membership. And those are all important things of subcultures. Usually subcultures also come along with unique lifestyle or clothes, fashion, dress, appearance, language, and these kind of things. And then, it's a range, right? I think we all belong to different subcultures. Some of them are more intense than others. Look at that suspension subculture. It's a very unique subculture. What makes it unique is probably very restricted in terms of access. And there's a lot of meaning going on in terms of the meaning that people get from being a membership into a particular subculture. One thing to think about, I'm not asking you to do it on the assignment, but think about the three theoretical perspectives and how they may apply to these concepts. From a functionalist viewpoint, thinking about subculture, it's that thing of integration, what Durkheim talked about, is an important part of being integrated into communities. And it's through subcultures or countercultures that we do that kind of work. So that's kind of maybe a functionalist application. The conflict theory application is maybe sort of asking questions about what happens when a culture, a subculture forms and it goes against the dominant culture. What is the response from dominant culture to that particular culture? This is particularly true of countercultures. Subcultures exist within the broader society itself, but they're not trying to change society. So gangs, for example, gangs are a subculture, not a counterculture. A counterculture is organized for social change. If we look back, we look at, I guess we look back and look at all kinds of historical examples, but we could also look at more contemporary examples of looking at the Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement. These are sort of counterculture if we kind of get into individuals who really are involved and engaged in the work of trying to change society. So from a conflict theory viewpoint, the question starts to become one of, if there's a deficiency within society, groups are organizing to try to organize and rally around social change within society itself, and what's dominant culture's response to that? Because when countercultures are pushing up against dominant culture, the power structure is going to be less than happy about that, and they're going to try to push back on these particular groups. And the last one, interactionism. Interactionism is sort of thinking about meanings and identities and perspectives. So thinking about being belonging to a particular culture or subculture or counterculture, it's focused on what is the process of making meaning, the perspectives that are shared, the perceptions, the language that's being used, and how language shapes people's identities. Well, that's kind of a general idea of those three things. Another concept that you're going to get into in the content review is Charles Cooley's Looking Glass Self. It's a concept that's found in social psychology classes as well. And then the general idea, I think it's really important, is that what Cooley and what theorists and philosophers identify historically is that the individual cannot exist without society itself. So Cooley had a statement that the self and society are twin-born, that there's no way of developing a sense of self without having others around us. And you could look at all kinds of cases of the feral children raised without any socialization. There's a couple great Learning Channel videos about kids, even young or older kids who are removed from human contact and what happens to those individuals. Also, great examples of people in solitary confinement, of what happened, and what is the impact of being in isolation, social isolation to the individual. One thing that I'm asking you to do is look at, Looking Glass Self. The idea is that we develop a sense of who we are based on the reactions and responses we get from others. It could be very specific others, people that we know, our family, our friends, people in our community. It also could be from, the mass media, in this case, advertising, right? Looking at white teeth. And white teeth starts to become something where I, noticed maybe about, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that, more and more products on white teeth, more and more communication about that. And start to think about, man, this is like an area of our bodies now that we pay attention to maybe differently than we did before, in part because what we're being shown as being the proper way, or what is the moral sort of way of looking. So profound influences on some of this stuff in terms of our own identity. Okay, then let's talk about the theoretical overview part, talk about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. This is one of my favorite areas of sociology. Related to Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is this idea about language and meaning. And we'll talk more about this throughout the course of the term. But the basic idea of Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is that language shapes your reality. So you view the world through the lens of language. I mean, that's sort of the general idea. But it gets really complicated and fascinating really fast. So if we take this idea that language shapes the way that we view the world, then and also that language, embedded within language, is a value system, is a particular way of looking at the world. We start to recognize that how individuals or how groups of people view the world is not innate, it's not inborn, it's not natural. It's something that had to be learned along the way, and it's being shaped by culture itself. And that, I'll give you a couple different examples that maybe kind of clarify, sort of think about this power of language in this particular way. If we look at a concept of, let's say, a hot topic right now, controversial topic, or a topic of a lot of public discussion, is about undocumented workers, or we could also talk about undocumented workers, illegal immigrants, another terminology, or illegal aliens, another terminology as well. Each of these different ways of these different language systems or different phrases, undocumented workers, illegal aliens, illegal immigrants, all three of those are different perspectives. They're not just different words, they're different value systems that are behind them. They're different ways of influencing how individuals see the social world itself. Some of these words are more objective than others, or more descriptive. Some of them are more emotional. The illegal aliens is very emotive. It has a lot of biases that are built within that particular way of thinking, or that particular language system. Undocumented workers is more objective. Illegal aliens, illegal immigrants is also, for me, somewhat problematic because of how we're using the word illegal. It's not that individuals who are here without documentation. I guess you could say that definitely they are illegal, but it's the meaning that we attach to that illegality becomes a really important part of that piece. A more just sort of common everyday example, one I was interested in when we first moved here 15 years ago, was with all the home construction, and you see the rock that's outside of homes, right? That's brickwork or rock work that's sort of decorating the outside of a home. Well, it's concrete, poured concrete with colors and different shapes. And language on the outside of the box I saw one day was cultured stone. And to me, that sounds a lot better than fake rock, right? So it's it's cultured stone. It gives it a sense of oddness about it, or a sense of there's a different status about that. It sounds nicer. Cultured stone versus fake rock. Right, so it's language and how language is shaping reality in that regard. I have a background in social work. I have a master's in social work. I worked in the clinical area of social work for a brief period of time. Involved in social work, I was learning a new language system. That language system was shaping the way in which I viewed reality itself. And I think whatever profession you go into, the more you go into that profession, the more you're learning a language system that gives you a perspective that's different than other people might have. And then finally, sort of another concept that I find really powerful about language is this idea of that language is like a soul, right? So if we learn a new language, we develop a new soul. For those who are bilingual or multilingual, they have multiple souls. They have multiple ways of thinking. I'll give you one example of an expression in a different culture. How language, the power of language. So in the United States, somebody gives birth, a person gave birth, right? In some Central South American countries, the expression is dar una luz. Dar is to give, and una luz is a light, to give a light. I mean, what a powerful, I mean, when I first came across it, I was like, wow, it's just so fascinating and powerful. Different ways of describing the same experience, but they take you to different places, right? Just that shift in language is a really powerful shift. So hopefully you enjoy getting into Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, sort of language. Language is fascinating, interesting, and it's a powerful thing. Oh, one final example. I always enjoy this one. When I was in grad school, had a colleague in class who was very quiet, didn't say a lot throughout the course of the term. Near the end of the term, a student asked the person, why are you so shy? So this person described this person as shy. Shy has a kind of a negative connotation to it. And the person responded back, she said, it's not that I'm shy, it's that I'm not afraid to be quiet. And I was like, wow, that is a phenomenal difference in sort of seeing things. And it's words and describing, right? So being careful of the words that we use to describe things, because, it's how we view the world, it's how we view self, and it's how we view others. Okay, now it's going to move on to the empathy section. The empathy section, 2 videos, 2 TED Talks. The one in particular I want to talk about for a second is Simon Tam's video on interviewing a white supremacist. And I think it's powerful, and it gives a great example of the power of sociology of empathy, or an empathetic approach. Again, it's cognitive, it's not affective empathy. It's seeking to understand. And imagine if you had an opportunity to have a conversation with someone who's so different than you, and to ask questions in a way that are not devaluing, demeaning, but are seeking to understand. And he goes through this process, I think a lengthy process, just in preparation for thinking about how he's going to engage in this conversation without sort of projecting his own biases, projecting his own things onto this other person. It's not about agreeing or disagreeing with this person. It's about trying to understand this person. So powerful example, I think, of sociology of empathy. And then the video section, a couple videos on food and culture. I think food and culture are fascinating to sort of examine. You can look at just the United States in and of itself, right? Look at different regions around the world, regions around the United States. You can look at the influence of technology in food and food production and what that says about culture, eating habits, how we eat, where we eat, the length of time it takes to eat. These are all expressions of culture. We recently took a trip to Spain, and being in Spain, eating is a different experience. We could occupy a restaurant or a table at a restaurant. Oftentimes tables are outdoors and multiple tables, right? And you sit down for a couple of hours, never feeling rushed to move on, to never feeling sort of like, it's more of an event, a longer term event. Such an expression of culture. It's fascinating to look at one thing and just to sort of see how culture is being expressed through that. In this case, we're looking at food. And then two other things. One of them is to encourage you to think about the 3 sociological perspectives as applied to culture. And I'll kind of give you a quick summary of one way of the 3 theories as applied to culture. The functionalist perspective has the view that the values and beliefs that are part of culture come from a consensus. Not necessarily in an agreement from everyone, but a general consensus. And it's always in the process of change. The word used to talk about culture from a functionalist viewpoint is idealism. That the values that we have, these are the ideals that we work towards achieving. These are sort of core fundamental values that help to bind individuals to the collective whole. And like I said, it's never like it's always the same thing. It's in flux, it's in movement, but we have to have some core values that we get centered around as a culture, as a place, in order to develop a sense of integration, belonging, connection, and also regulation, so that we know kind of what the values are going on. Conflict theory has a little bit different perspective. Conflict theory has a perspective that the values that are part of culture relate to the power structure. What Marx would talk about is the materialist structure, the economic structure. So values of capital over values of family. So we talk about that we are a very family valued society, but I kind of question that a lot. I mean, it's not that individuals don't have a lot of strong values and attachment to their families, absolutely. But I think, our driving value is economic. Economic values are overemphasized over family itself. And there's some different values in this example, but I'll just give you a quick example. The Family Medical Leave Act, or I should say more generally, maternity or paternity leave. We are the only industrialized country without paid maternity leave or paternity leave. And it raises a question from a conflict theory viewpoint about the values, what values are driving that. And those values relate to power, they relate to distribution of resources, and these are the kind of things that to think about. And then the interactionist perspective is one about thinking about language and culture sort of interacting, the values of culture, the meaning making within culture itself. So interactionism is paying attention to ideas and perceptions and language, the symbols of a particular country. The flag of a country is very symbolic, right? How do people develop meaning regarding these things? So in general, that's sort of we're kind of looking at. Give you an example real quick that maybe kind of tie across all three of them. In the 1960s, during the Black Power movement, this was a sign, right? Holding one's fist up in that regard. In the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City, a couple of a gold medal winner and a silver medal winner for the United States. When they took the podium, they went like this, and they had their medals removed from them because it was viewed as an act of protest. So from start off the interactionist perspective, it's like what is the meaning that people attach to that? How do different groups maybe view that particular gesture? That gesture doesn't mean anything by itself. We have to give meaning to that. And the interactionist perspective is kind of interested in how do we give meaning to it? What is the meaning that different groups might give to that same gesture? Conflict theory is going to get into, well, the meanings that this gesture is a demonstration of trying to get more empowerment, right? It's addressing inequalities within society itself. And this kind of behavior is being regulated because it's challenging the dominant culture itself. And then functionalism is going to get into thinking about, just how things are being negotiated, how values are being negotiated within society itself. And that's kind of sort of the general idea there. Kind of encourage you to look at some of the other videos that are at the bottom of the review and exploration assignment. Flight F227. It's a great kind of case study of social constructionism. There's a great article in Blackboard on Flight F227 and the survivors. I think you'll really enjoy the reading. I encourage you to go to Blackboard and pull up that document and read that document. It'll give you a great example of social construction of reality, which is related to the interactionist perspective. And then you'll notice the last link is a podcast to the Scholars Network. And that network is all about public policy stuff. And if you're interested in sociology or in this area of work, there's a lot of jobs and opportunities in the area of social policy. I encourage you, just to be aware of that. I want you to be aware of that. So if you're thinking about, I really enjoy kind of thinking about these kind of issues, you have ideas about a host of different social issues, you'd like to be involved in the process of addressing some of these social problems and things like that, consider a degree in social policy. And there's a lot of degrees, a lot of institutions offer those degrees. OSU over in Corvallis offers a degree in public policy. If you have questions about that degree, let me know. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you about that. Best wishes this week. Enjoy all the readings. Thanks for all you do, and have a great day.